Dr. Justin Grimes here from Apply to Graduate School. I'm so excited that you're on this journey, that you are deciding that there is more to your career. There is more to your life that you want to do, that you want to position yourself as an expert with a lot of knowledge and skills. And this stamp of approval, this one marker, additional marker you need is a graduate degree. Or maybe you just said, hey, I've always wanted to get one of this. I love research and I want to learn more and I want to share more. Or maybe you're saying, you know what, this is really just a means to an end, Dr. Grimes. To be honest with you, in order for me to get to the promotion, to get to the next role, the next level, this is a minimum requirement. Whatever your reason is, I'm proud of you because you could have decided to do something different. And not only are you going to apply to graduate school, you're going to get in, you're going to thrive, and you're going to finish. So let me plant that seed into you right now. This is your time. This is your opportunity. It is not a fluke. It is not a guess. It is not a random idea planted into your brain. That right now you are starting this journey at this point in your life. And I strongly believe if you finish this thing all the way through, if you start the journey and go all the way to the point where you hit submit, and when you get that letter in the mail, all this process will be behind you and you'll be starting your journey. So today we're going to talk about whether to pursue a degree part-time or full-time. Hey, let's start with some statistics. According to the National Center for Educational Statistics, their last report in 2021 stated that 1.8 million full-time post-baccalaureate students pursued a graduate degree and 1.4 million part-time post-baccalaureate students pursued a graduate degree. That's a lot of people, y'all. Now, on average, around 4.1 million people apply. So that tells you right there, everybody don't get in. So nevertheless, like, it's some things I really want you to think about related to this process. And, you know, there's really a set of 3 questions I really want you to think about. Number 1, when do you want to take classes? You look at your schedule. When you know your schedule, when you know when you wake up, when you go to work, if you're not going to work, when you finish in school, you know your schedule generally. And if you don't, I encourage you to spend some intentional time writing down what you spend your time on. Where are you utilizing time? Because time ain't going nowhere. 24 hours a day, 160 days a week. You're using them in some way. But I want you to think through, when do you want to take classes? Do you want to take them during the day? Do you want to take them during the evening? Do you want the freedom to know, like, hey, I just really want to log into a system and say, here's the coursework, here are the assignments, let me go ahead and get this thing done. You want to know very clearly when you want to, and more importantly, when are you available to take classes? Second question, how much can you afford? And I'm not talking just financial. I'm talking how much time can you afford to dedicate to this degree? How much money can you pay for this degree? What about your emotional and physical health related to this? It's going to require you to sit down. It's going to require you to go somewhere. If you're going to a brick and mortar building, that's physical, right? There's a lot of emotions that go into this process. There's a lot of struggle and challenges, but there are also a lot of great aha moments and light bulb moments. It's filled with a whole lot of emotion. It's an emotional journey, y'all. And so, do you have capacity and space for that? That's something you want to think through. And the third question I really want you to think through is, when do you ideally want to complete your degree? And I use that word ideally, like underline that, because there is your goal, right? Like your expectation, there's the program's goals and expectations, and there's the reality. And them 3 things are not always often in alignment. I just want you to think about ideally, because you don't know what's going to get in the way. You can have an experience like mine. Life can get in the way, you know. The reality is that some people experience financial loss. Some people experience physical loss. Some people, priorities change. Their workload increases. Children are getting sick. You know, all types of things happen that get in the way of their work that may delay their completion time. And so I want you to be flexible with this. I don't want you to beat yourself up and be so hard pressed and say it's got to be done in this way in this time. This process, you will learn very quickly early on, is a lot of this is out of your control. It is about you doing what you can do in the locus of control of which you have. And there are parts of this that you don't. And so you need to learn that very early on. Okay. But here's some other things I really want you to think about, right? I want you to think about the state you're living in and the institution at which you're applying to, if it's in the same state or another, and what do they consider to be part-time and full-time enrollment. And this matters more importantly if you're getting some form of educational assistance or financial aid. because there's FAFSA, right? But then there's state policies, particularly if you're an employee. And you get any form of employee assistance, especially through the federal government. If you work as a school, work in a school, work in a particular research lab or something that is federally funded, then they have very strict stipulations in terms of what your enrollment type is in order for you to be able to get resources or money to pay for it, right? Like, I know when I was in the state of Georgia, you could only take no more than 2 classes per academic semester. And so, yeah, most of the time we didn't have full-time students who were also full-time employees. So you have to really think through that and read and research what the state policies are. The next thing is look at the cost of tuition and fees. How much do you have to pay per credit hour based on your enrollment as a full-time student versus a part-time student? Sometimes it's different, but you won't know that until you actually spend the intentional time doing the research. So you're going to do that today. You're going to type in part-time versus full-time enrollment, graduate school, insert the name of the institution, and just read and sit with it for a moment and think through and make a decision based on that. The next thing is I want you to look at, financial aid and fellowship requirements, right? There are a number of requirements, particularly when it comes to fellowship and grants, that state that you must be enrolled full-time each semester. Read the fine print. You may hear things like, oh, I got a fully funded PhD. What are the enrollment requirements for that? Because I guarantee you there's going to be one with it. So you want to be sure that you know what those requirements are before you ever apply to the grant or the fellowship or the scholarship or for the graduate program. And if you're unsure, ask questions. Reach out to someone who's in charge, whether the institution or if it's a external funding, right? The grantor of this is somewhere else. Another organization, NSF, SREB, Ford Fellowship, something else. Read the fine print, okay? The details, okay? So let's talk about pros and cons. So as it relates to part-timers, some of the pros that I think are really there is that sometimes when you're a part-timer, you have a little bit of a different work contemplation, but you don't have the same high level of work contemplation because you're already in your work, more likely. No, most of the part-timers are people who work for a living. You have a lot of lower ongoing cost because you are able to use your income right now to pay for the degree. And so oftentimes you're able to pay for things a little bit faster and quicker where a lot of full-timers are having to delay. And you get to implement that with your learning. Now, the cons of part-time is, I think it takes you longer. I know. It just takes you longer to finish because you're not able to take as many credit hours. Oftentimes, that also, because you're taking less classes, results in less networking opportunities. There are some awards, travel grants, other additional resources that are available that are only available full-time students that because you're part-time, you might not get those, okay? And let's talk about the full-timers. Pros of being full-time, you get done with your program a lot faster because you're able to take more hours. You do have access to the networking and opportunities and a lot of other resources that I mentioned. And typically you're more fully immersed in that, right? Like when you're a full-time student or a full-time graduate student, this is your role. This is your job. This is what your focus is. Whereas the cons are potential burnout because you're doing this, the high level of stress, because everything is riding on you finishing this, the quicker the better. And operating from a full-time salary and being a part-time student is very different than being a full-time student relying on a graduate assistantship. The money is different. The money are not equal. And so that sometimes can be a con for people, the amount of money they have to spend. Career interruption. A lot of times people are full-time are stopping their careers, or they are having some interruption in terms of they're not able to fully commit to their work professionally in the ways they would through grad school. And so they have to make, a decision related to this career indecision, okay? And you often have a delayed earning potential because you're doing this full time and you're taking the full amount of credit hours, particularly I'm talking fall and spring. Sorry, I should have clarified that. Summer's a little more different and tricky. So just explore what the summer options are in terms of what they classify as full-time and part-time. And read the book. We talk more about it in there. But I'm just saying, if you're full-time, often you're delaying your income and your gratification of what you receive. So that's something to really think about. Now, for me, do I think that there's one advantage or disadvantage or you should pick one over the other? I think whatever works best for you. And starting with answering those early questions, you can make a decision and you'll make a good decision. And guess what? It's okay if it changes. There are people who set out and start with the intention of being part-time graduate students and full-time employees who then say, you know what, in order for me to get this program finished, to get this dissertation, this thesis done, I got to be fully immersed in this process. So I'm going to leave my job and I'm going to become a full-time graduate student for the next year or two or however long it takes them. That happens. There are individuals who start full-time and if they're lucky and they're in a program that has part-timers, they might even drop their enrollment, but that comes at a cost. Or they may say, you know what, this isn't the right program at all. I need a part-time program. So they transfer those credits over. Hopefully they will be accepted. That process is not always seamless. But regardless of what decision you make, I am proud of you for making a decision. I'm glad that you're thinking through what you want to do next. And I know that you're going to be successful in graduate school. And don't forget, go ahead and purchase a copy of 20 Questions to Answer Before You Apply to Graduate School. And you can get the whole gambit of this whole process. And I'm gonna be there walking you through this journey if that is what you need. You can find the book, our blog, other resources, and everything we do, from our ASAP coaching program to our personal statement advantage program, where we help you write and edit your personal statement. There's a lot of things that we offer at Apply to Graduate School. So go to the website, applytograduateschool.com, and I look forward to learning more about your journey because you're going to share with me in the comments. Have a good one.